Okay, so I can start by introducing myself. My name is Viktor. I live in southern Sweden, and that's where I met these guys at the Soul Punk festival a couple of months ago, when it was still warm and light and beautiful down here. Now it's very cold and quite gray and rainy. And I work with a few different things. I work a lot in the village that I live. I live in a village of about 1,000 people. So I do a lot of organizing. I run a co-working space and a little mushroom farm and an event space here. And basically, this is the scale of people that I'm most interested in building software for. I'm interested in larger groups as well, but most of the things I will build, we will test in this setting and scale. So I'm very interested in building software to support the organizations and processes that I'm running. And I've also been very interested in distributed systems, and especially I came across Holochain about 5 years ago, something like that. And I went to a hackathon and I got really excited about that. And then I've been a part of that ecosystem for a lot of years. I've never worked really in that ecosystem until now. I still don't have like a steady job. We are building software and we have an open collective and we've had some support. Not a lot yet. But I'm really excited to build distributed applications. The first one that we're building with our little group called DarkSoil Studio, which is a couple of us that have been around the ecosystem for a while, collaborating. And the first application we're going to build is Gather, which is basically an event co-creation facilitation software. One of the big needs for me in the village I live is that there's a bunch of people that would like to do things together, but they very often don't happen because there is it's hard to know exactly who else would want to do this and when should we do this and what do we need to do this. And it just, people talk about it, but it just gets stopped because there isn't a way to kind of co-create. So we want to be able to set a preliminary or proposal for an event and have the needs filled out, and then you could make that happen once you see that people are interested and stuff like that. And then it's like event management where you see what events are happening and you can say that you want to go to events or whatever. But this is based on, we're making an app for our village and making just the basically any Holochain in general, any Holochain application you build in its own network. It's not connected to any sort of general big thing. It's just they are all separate networks, and unless you are actually invited to it or it's published somewhere, nobody else knows about that network exists. It's just a bunch of computers talking to each other. So that's what we're going for first. I'm also really excited by this other project that I put some links in the channel. And one of them is around which is another piece of software around group management in general. That is like a frame for what we usually consider a topic called membrane management, which is basically who's in the group, who's not in the group, how do you get into the group, how do you exclude someone from a group, what are the rules, that kind of thing. And to have a general application of that, and then within that you can drop in whatever tools we build along over time. So that's something I'm really excited to dive into as well, or keep working with. And so those are kind of a few different ways that I've been playing. I can just generally, I don't know if maybe you'll have to respond out loud, but I would love to know the level of where, if anybody knows about Holochain, or if I should go into that, or what the kind of sense is in the rule.
I think I've heard about it.
If I guess I can only see someone sitting on the couch, but there's like a thing where you can go. I know
Can you hear me?
what there is, and I have no idea what you're talking about. And there's like a from the top of your head, if you go high.
Can you hear?
Can you hear us?
Somebody can just
Can you hear us?
sense this in the room.
I think. Can you hear us? Does this work?
Yeah.
Ah, cool. I getcha. I mainly only heard about Holochain. Like, I'm not aware of the specifics. What would actually makes Holochain? If you could summarize it a little bit, it would be nice.
I'm assuming that you see it.
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, okay.
And see it.
Okay, so basically, and see it. Great. So basically, I thought this image might be useful. I'm not sure. Basically, a Holochain application has two parts. There's there's a this first chain. Basically, you're starting up. When you're starting up an application, the first kind of things you do is just you put in your identity. I'm sure you guys are fairly familiar with publishing your key and stuff like that. And then all of the things that you publish after that are going to be stored in your private chain, so your personal chain within the application, and that is a immutable ledger. That's people are probably pretty used to that sense of every entry is hashed, and the next entry notes what that is, so you can't break the chain. But then for any public information, that is actually just published. Some of the entries that are said to be public, so you can have both public and private entries on your chain. If it's a private entry, you are just basically signing that you have a piece of information. You're not disclosing what the information is, just a hash of it, so that you can later on say this is the information I have, or that it's something that somebody else can request to be seen from you. But if it's a public piece of data, that means that it's public within the application. So that is to say, only the people that have been invited into that application are going to see the information. They are going to be the peers that receive that information. And those public records are, when they are published, and they're published with the knowledge that this should be shared into the application publicly, they are shared into a DHT, distributed hash table. I'm guessing that most of you are familiar with that, the same thing that BitTorrent uses. But this distributed hash table is a little bit revamped from many of those prior iterations. It has a thing where there's a nice thing around that somewhere here, where you can see what users are going to be, maybe it's here, based on what the hash is of your key, or what you're actually based on what your public key is. That assigns you a certain space on the DHT, and any pieces of content, so that's a content addressable space. So any pieces of content that are published into the DHT are handled by the agents that are closest to that specific key, that public key. So that's how you kind of optimize the DHT and make sure that you know who to ask for what information, that kind of stuff. But I don't know if it's useful to go super technical. In general, it's more the basic idea that every application is its own DHT. There's a bunch of biological language in Holochain and the kind of analogies around it, because there is a very deep ambition to try to move computing closer to how living systems work in general. And that's one of the reasons why I got really excited about this particular project. And coming from a very biologically or biology-centered last decade. And so a piece of code or an application is basically called a DNA. So those are the rules of the application. As long as you share the same rules of the application, the same validation logic, and there's a whole thing on validation. This is from the core concepts thing of how you validate things on the DHT. So basically anybody who receives a piece of information is going to put it through the validation rules of that application, so that people aren't allowed to put in information into the DHT that doesn't validate. So basically those validation rules are what makes up the core of this is one network, one DNA, one application. And that's how you separate one application from another. And basically, so if anybody changes the rules, you're basically forking yourself into a new space, a new network, and you're playing a new game. So you're no longer... Then you are able to create bridges between those two games if you want to. So if you're having like one Twitter application that has 126 characters and one that has 500 characters, you can still publish into both if you're connected to both applications. You just have to do that on your side. Any application can connect to any other application because it's peer-to-peer, as you know, like it's local first. So you can just basically any function that you can call on any application. Right, and maybe that's a lot, and maybe I don't know. It's really hard when I have zero feedback over the room to say if what's landing and what's not landing, and what's interesting and what's not interesting. So maybe I'd be more interested in going into questions and answers to see what you guys are interested in around this, and if I can answer your questions.
Okay.
You just
thank you for the introduction. I didn't know about Holochain before. It sounds actually very interesting. Now I'm a little bit curious what you built upon it.
Basically, the applications that we've been developing so far is the event management stuff. I've been drawing. One of the things that I've been designing a couple of times over is the application for our food cooperative. I'm running a food cooperative in my village, and we have this ordering, collecting orders from different, or collecting information from different producers and creating orders for all of the members of our association. That's an application that I've designed out but haven't built yet, but that's also coming once we have stability. I've built one of the things I'm really most excited to rebuild once things are stable is the distributed library application that I did a long time ago, which is basically giving people the ability to put in the books on their bookshelf. And because we don't have a library in our village of 1,000 people, but we have probably 10,000 books, so it's there. We just have to put the books in. So that's something I really want to do, with also like giving us an ability to actually see who did I lend this book to, and also maybe if it didn't come back or came back torn, it's like good to know. Other things that are in my direct pipeline of wanting to build, because I need them right here, is a tool sharing piece of software. And the way I'm building most of these things, it's for them to go into as this. I'll create a group for my village and also a subgroup or a different group for my cooperative, and then be able to put in the tool share and the library stuff into those groups. So basically the contexts are defined before, and then you add the tools that we want to use depending on the context. So those are the basic things I'm building now, and I've shared a few links in the thread I started. So there's some links to both of our DarkSoil Studio website, which has links to the repos that we're going to be releasing more there. There's a few already. And then there's a link to a larger spreadsheet. There's a group called Happenings Community, because a HAP is a Holochain app. Basically, that's what people are calling it, or the Holochain people are calling them, instead of a DApp. And so there's a list, there's an Airtable thing there that's being curated with projects that are building.
Could you share? We like how it works, how you use it?
Yeah, I was looking at the last iteration and to see if there was anybody online with that version so I could play with it live. But I didn't find anybody online. But basically, I can show you it anyway. You're just gonna have to wait for like 2 weeks until there's a polished release coming out. But I'll show you. Let me see if I can. Can I share my whole screen? No, I can't. Yeah, I can.
It should work.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, so there's this Wii application, which is basically under development around. So basically, you'd be able to create a Wizard Amigos group. Didn't want to do that, but I created one for Röstånga, and within that group, you'd see who's there, and you'd be able to add the different kind of applications that you have. And this is based on there's an underlying kind of Git thing, more or less Git, which is the dev hub that contains. If there was any people online right now, you would see like all of the pieces of packages that are published into the Holochain Wii ecosystem. And then there's the App Store way of viewing them, which also basically feeds this view for each group. And so each group would be able to install. It's really sucky that I can't show you actually. So I'll do another demo in a month. But this is Kanban boards. Talking stickies is basically for online meetings to be able to prioritize and stick on the wall what people want to talk about. How is about making different processes around how you decide things. In games, it's like a general game making application where it's just like a board and pieces, and you can choose out whatever pieces and tiles you want, and you can make games without actually validating the rules and stuff. It's just basically you have to do that as a human. So those are just some of the things that are happening. So this is Gather. Our app's going to be in here as well, and a bunch of other things. There's a chat, like basically what Discord has, kind of chat channels thing that's almost ready.
That's a type of blockchain.
But yeah, so this is basically, and then when you want to get somebody into this group, you'd send them this link, and they would be able to join. If they don't have the application already, they download the application and then they join the group. They've been there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So, do you maybe have links to the DNA documentation? How do I get started with a Hello World app, and how would I put it into Wii?
Yeah.
Like something, how would that work? Maybe if this documentation is simple, we can even see something.
So setting up the environment kind of stuff is here. Maybe I should. Let's see. Share. So I should say that I haven't been. I actually just started programming again. I haven't done any programming in basically the last 10 years. But I'm currently doing a project where I'm integrating a bunch of server, like regular. I'm integrating Open Collective with a bunch of bookkeeping software. So I haven't actually done this for a long time. I'm just working with Guillaume, who's written a bunch of this stuff, and he's the one doing the actual development. So he'd be better off showing you this. But you can scaffold a simple Hello World application, and there is a bunch of scaffolding tools. I think that this. Well, this is, I can at least show you. So I'm not gonna run through, but this is here, and I sent the link in the I can send it again if you want. But in the thread, there's a link to the developer holochain.org, which has all of this stuff. One of the cool things that I could show you, that I really like, that really illustrates how things work, is the playground that GM has built.
And put it in front.
And this is actually something that is, when you scaffold an app using the default scaffolding tools that are now being maintained by the Holochain organization. EM working with built them, and now they're taken over by Holochain. Basically, this is an application running in the background that kind of gives you a visual representation, or it actually shows you what all of the data is happening in real time in your app. So if you connect this to your app, or if you build the app with scaffolding, you can see how the DHT is getting populated and like what agent has what entries and those.
Very similar to that.
So that's quite useful on the back end side. But that's not at all what you were asking for. That was just something that I felt was cool to show. Yes. I don't know. I feel like I don't think I should give this demo how to do it because I haven't done it. So, that's something that I think we should, if you really want to do this, I can ask GM if he wants to jump on.
Do you have any
But I think, I don't know how much longer you have down there in the event, but that's probably, I don't know.
Do you want to say something, Tony?
Maybe. Does it work?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little bit. I was sitting here thinking. I'm a little bit surprised about Holochain. I haven't really looked into it before. As I said, I'm kind of building something that is similar as to Holochain, but without the use of servers, like pure front end. So, with that being said, I'd like to know more about it. Your talk has been a little bit of an eye opener for me at the moment. I didn't know there was a community.
That's great.
Yeah. I didn't know there was a community about Holochain or HApps. Like, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. How do you get engaged with it? Like, what's the entry point?
Easiest thing, I'll put a link to an invitation link to the Dev HC. That's basically where most people, I'll put that in the Amigo Dev, where most people hang out. That's probably the easiest way you just ask a question of whatever you're interested in or find things. There's yeah, I think that's the best way. Otherwise, I mean, if you have specific project, I mean, it sounds like that's the best way. If you have like it sounds quite a general thing. That's similar.
I wanted to build blockchain games on coinless blockchains. Like, I didn't want to have exactly the kind of same model that Holochain has. Like, there is no native coin on it, and you basically have validation rules. As long as people play the game, it should be fair and nice. And yeah, pretty much what you explained at the beginning. So
yeah,
we'll definitely check it out. Do you say it was where did they hang out? On Discord, or what was the protocol?
Discord, yeah.
Discord.
So in the Portugal 2023 on the Wizard Amigos Discord, There's now an invite to the DevHC Discord, which is which is now being managed by the Holochain organization.
Okay.
And,
thank you.
Is open for that. One thing that could be good to know, because it creates a lot of confusion for a lot of people, is that there is actually a company. Now I have a lot of feedback. Oh, thank you. So there's the Holochain Foundation, the organization holding the Holochain stuff, which is basically the open source framework all of the stuff we're built on. And then there's a company owned by that foundation called Holo Limited, which is basically a hosting service, so that anybody who doesn't want to install the app can have access to apps through a web-hosted gateway of peer hosts. So basically, I and about a couple of thousand other people have a little box, a little hardware box that was crowdfunded 5 years ago, something like that, 4 years ago, where we are currently alpha testers for the hosting network. So anybody who creates a distributed app can put it in the hosting network and have it hosted so that people can just, instead of installing the app and having the keys on their, or they having it all run on their computer, they only hold the key in their browser and then somebody else hosts their chain. And so that's a way to make it like a web app, even though the backend is actually a distributed network. And that's basically a transition strategy for people that are used to the web and also for applications that need to be facing outside of just the people that have. So if you're building like a Airbnb thing or whatever, you want to have it visible to people outside of your network, so they just send a link to someone and have them see it, and then that service is made to do that. So, but that could be confusing. Like when you're getting into, there's people talking about Holo, which is that company, which is a hosting service built on top, and then there's Holochain, which is the actual underlying foundation, and there's also a token. So Holo created a token in order to, which is going to be one-to-one switched for HoloFuel, which is the kind of built-in currency of the hosting network. And so Holochain doesn't require any of that. There's no need for any currencies, right, like that. But there is this other kind of part of that universe that people get confused with, because it's kind of what's what, you know. But there is no, so you don't need any currencies, or you don't need any coins or anything to run Holochain.
I get it. Thank you for heads up. It's I guess they have to run it somehow. Like it's some yeah. I get it. Thanks for heads up.
I also have a question. Like the developer tools look super interesting. I maybe if you're familiar with it, like I would be really interested what the details, like what all these different parts of the dev tools are and how they work, because they seem to give some sort of overview, but everything is also decentralized. So how do they even get access to the information? What can I do? How would I use those, if that's possible?
The thing that I showed.
Yeah, exactly. The playground dev tools, like there were like multiple different parts to it, but it looks interesting. But how do they work? What can I see there?
Yeah. So let's see if I can get it up again.
Mute.
I have muted.
So basically, I mean, this instance of the playground is just a demo. It's just a server-hosted demo of it. But if you install it when you create an application, and I should also say that there is scaffolding that is also now a part of the regular HC, like the Holochain. If you install the development environment, you have a scaffolding tool, and with that scaffolding tool, you can basically say, I want these type of entries, like this many entries, and this entry should be dependent on that type of entry, and these are the kind of, this is an image, this is a string, this is and it will generate the code and UI elements and the connections between the backend and UI elements for you, so you have the beginnings of an app. But that's all that should all be in the user docs. If it's not there, then let me know and I can get PM in who will be much better at guiding that process if there are people that are interested in building. And for this tool, so once you have this actually connected to your application, you would be one of the nodes. You would only see one of the nodes. There wouldn't be like all of these nodes. You would just start up your application to have you as a node. And then once you're finding other nodes, they would show up on this map of your DHT. And if you create some sort of action on the DHT, like publishing a new piece of content, then you could see which other nodes have received that content based on the information that you have. So basically, you are constantly gossiping with other nodes in the network to see if somebody else has received a piece of information. And you can also signal, which basically means creating a direct connection between you and another peer. So if you're doing something much more focused on, so if you're making a direct chat or something, then you wouldn't use the DHT gossip to send those messages back and forth. Instead, you would create a direct signaling path where you would just message that node straight away. But basically, this gives you an overview of the things that aren't sent as signals, but are sent as gossip, and what, as far as you can tell from the information that you have as a node, it would give you the view of that application. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. It's interesting. You say when I'm using it, I would only see myself as a node. So I assume maybe every node has some sort of a debug port or something.
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry, Choppy.
we're offline again, I think.
Yeah, let's try again.
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So does every node have some sort of a debug or logs port that I can download to see information about what they processed, what they have, what's the current state of the network, or how would I even get access to this if it runs outside of a simulation that is all on my computer? Can I
So I'll go into very much into assumption mode because I don't really know about how the playground works and how you would connect to see what the gossip is that you have. But the playground, I'm pretty certain works by taking all of the incoming and outgoing just gossip calls and mapping those and tracking the incoming signal, so that the app, if the app includes the DNA of the playground, which is another Holochain application, then it would be receiving all of the information from the other apps that are connected to it, and it would just display whatever gossip is going in and out. Now, how you would create your own custom kind of channel into that information, I don't know. I need to ask, or either getting to the dev HC, which is probably more easier than me getting other people in here. But if you ask the questions in the dev HC, and I can ping people that I know are relevant to that question, and then you can get a better answer, because I haven't worked on that level, so I don't know.
I also have a question. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. How does it feel for the end user using the app? Like, what is abstracted away, or what do they have to learn when they start using? Like, even if they have this hosted, like the simplest way to enter. How does it feel? Does it feel completely like Web 2, or are there some little things that they need to learn?
So for the things that I've tried, and the thing, like we don't have a lot of real world experience because things are just maturing. But from the different ways that I've used applications, the most familiar way is to go if you're going into an hosted application, which is basically you just put in an email and a password. There's, for instance, I think one of the simplest ones to check out is, I think it's newsfeed.social. I think that's open. I don't know if it is fully open now. Oh, it's early access, but you can probably just sign up for it and you can get in. There is a, I'll put the link in here for the host. That's a hosted. How you can see a hosted application if you get early access for that. Otherwise, there are two main ways that you can, as a user, just try the applications. Both of them involve installing something on your computer, so that's a big step for a lot of people. But one of them is installing, basically, there's now a packaging pathway for if you have an application, you can just put it into this Towery thing. They call it Kangaroo is the name of the project, and because you put it in the branch of the Towery thing, and it just generates a all platforms executable. So you just run an app, and then you have the Holochain app within that one, and that's quite simple to if you want to build something and just try it. There's also the launcher, which is basically a that I can probably show actually. I'll put the link in at least. Which is basically a runtime kind of thing where you install the launcher and then there's an app store within there that you just pick apps and install them, and then you open those apps and it opens a new tab kind of, or a new window. That's also built on Towery, so it opens a new window and the app is in there. But yeah, then you have to install something. So that's the kind of user experience. As you either install just a straight app, or you are already playing with Holochain stuff and you just use the app store, or you can also in the launcher, if you just build things yourself, you can just install it from the file. You don't have to go to the app store. You can just install the Holochain app, and it will use the runtime, or the conductor as it's called, of the launcher to find all the peers and do all of the networking stuff. Yeah.
Do you know what?
I don't know if I have the latest launcher installed. Let me see if that's running.
Do you know if about the hardware requirements for running a node? Like, would it be possible to run it on a phone?
So that's what we're trying to do now with Gather, which is I can see all our event app. We're trying to get that running. There's been some people playing with getting Holochain running on both iOS and Android. There's been blockers for some of it. Currently, Android looks like it might be building. So that's what we'll probably get out first. But one of the things we're doing there is we're not going to have the phones gossip, because they're not very good at gossiping and they drain too much battery and stuff if you're constantly gossiping. So we'll have nodes that are just calling into other nodes that are computers that are on all the time. So for our app, we're going to have 1 or 2 or 3 at least computers running at all times to host the app. And then we're going to have all of the mobile nodes call into any of those computers to get their information. So they don't actually gossip anything. They just get big chunks of information from some of the more stable nodes. So that's how we're going to solve the issue of having Holochain on mobile to begin with. The other way of solving that issue right now would be to host something, but that hosting network is also just in beta, so we're alpha.
So like light clients, basically.
We're trying to get it to run natively, but so far it's working not great.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was showing you. This is basically the launcher. If you have something installed, it shows up here. This is another application for a textile, New York textile. They're doing like a value flows around fiber shed stuff, like coordinating fiber produce in upstate New York. It's quite cool. And then there's the App Store where you can download camera boards, or Newsfeed is basically Twitter. Reddit is basically Reddit. And Talking Stickies is what I was showing you before. And then you can select an app from the file system if you want to. That's what I did with this one. Just install it as a file. An interesting thing is if you put in a network seed. So basically, if I install this app, I would be in the same network as all the other people that install that app. But if I put in my village name as a network seed, that would fork this app, and I would now have my entire new network, a separate app that is our instance of this app, basically.
Could you connect to other instances? Like when you fork, you create your own DHT of, like you said, every app is its own DHT. But like if some other instance of the same app is running somewhere, the peers don't see each other. It's a completely independent thing.
Yes. If you're not running the exact same DNA, and by that it's like that little string, the network seed. If you put in you edit that information, that is meant to be a way of generating a new network that is separate from the other networks. And so that would be its own DHT. And there's lots of applications that actually you can check out. One of the more polished kind of working applications that's been working for actually a really long time, because they only use stable releases, and they don't really I put it there, I'll put it here. They don't really do things unless things are like, they don't update unless things are stable. They've got their application is a project management one, Acorn, and they have every project is its own DHT. Like every project is kind of its own little app, and you get invited to the app, which is that project. So they're using a bunch of DHTs within one application, and that's a fairly common pattern, that you have many DHTs, and also like one of the ways of actually solving the problem of not wanting to persist data. Basically, if you're putting a bunch of data in and start having these accumulated spaces of data, and it's really hard to delete things, so peers will keep gossiping it, then you can actually create throwaway DHTs, which is the term for it, which is basically trying to set up so that you continuously keep some things alive and some things long-term storage, and the things that are kind of short-term and maybe aren't needed outside of this current project that's working, then you throw that out. You don't maintain that DHT. Basically, whenever all nodes leave a DHT, that's when it's dead. Up until then, it's still kept alive.
But maybe just to understand Holochain community, like how big is the space? Like how many people are in the core? How are they financed? How does that work? The Holochain.
I think it was very choppy at the end, but is the question like, what does the community look like? How many people are in there? How is it financed?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So there's basically there's the Holochain core team, which has been funded. So all of the Holochain development for the last 5 years, which has had something like up and down, but around, I'd say 15 devs working for about 5 years continuously, maybe a bit more at times. All of that has been funded through the initial offering of Holo. So the pre-selling of the hosting credits as an ERC20 token. That generated something like $25 million, which has been the money that has been used to develop Holochain, basically. And I don't know what kind of runway there is for the Holo organization at this point that are funding the Holochain framework. I think that there are a couple of, at least 3 or 4 years until that funding runs out. And the idea around funding ongoing for Holochain as a framework is that Holo, the company, has a fee on the currency that runs the hosting network of 1% as a transaction fee for HoloFuel, and that transaction fee would actually feed enough money back in to keep the Holochain framework running. And then there are a bunch of the Holochain. There is a very active conversation now in Holo, the company, around how they want to support other creators and what kind of support they have. And that's actually, I think, and this is a personal opinion, that from outside of the company, that this will be very shaped by whether or not, because there's the token went down quite a lot. And so if there is depending on what the price is with that token, do I kind of support the Holo organization will be able to bring to the community. So far, most of the wider community is people that have funding from somewhere else that are building projects, like companies or just people that do it on their spare time. But there is probably something like I know of outside of the organization. There's probably something like 25, 30 devs that I know of that are building stuff in communities. And then there's a bunch of companies that have funded themselves in different ways that are also building a Holochain. And those companies, I don't know, like that's not very transparent. And yeah, I think the best kind of overall map for the community is the happenings.community, I think it was called. I put a link to that. I'll put a link again, where you can kind of get a view of things that are happening, like who are the players kind of in there. But yeah, I don't know, like something like that. I think I know. I've personally met about 100 or 70, 80 people that are engaged in the community at some level or degree, either in Holochain, Holo, or in one of the adjacent ecosystem projects. And I would say that there's probably a very large amount of, or not very large, but many times more that are people that are waiting for something that they can play with. Like there's a lot of people that were really engaged 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of like really interesting people in my world, really interesting people, but that then got really turned off by the fact that they hadn't seen anything working for a really long time. So I think that there were many companies that stopped and just said, well, okay, we'll come back to this when something's working. And there was a lot of other people that basically said like they really like the idea, they like the framing, they like how things are being talked about, but they until there's a technology working, they can't really do anything, so they'll just wait. So there's like a latent potency, I think, in the community, but those are the kind of figures for active participation.
Any other question? Somebody? No. This was super insightful. I mean, I think the problem of many communities, I mean, like that community also struggled with getting production ready, protocol out. They didn't, I mean, the core developers didn't have a token or anything, so it was very like dependent on public funding, so foundations and stuff. But lately, Bitcoin community invested, I think, something like 10 millions into developing a kit. I think we were talking about this kit, like a Zoom replacement, and they are kind of pushing this product and at the same time working on the protocol, which is free without any tokens and so on. But currently there is like a little bit more hype, I feel, because there's finally some money. Before was, I think, 10 years of development of that with altogether 3.5 million and like, I don't know, handful of people only pushing this whole thing. So here I feel that it's a little bit more positivity in the air. but it's still like a long way to get, and then we have to onboard all the users and explain them the keys and peer-to-peer, and yeah, it's fun times, I think. So as far as I'm concerned, I got like a lot of very interesting information, and thank you for sharing. If there is anyone else having any more questions or something, no, then we would like to thank you for taking time for us. Sweet. Okie dokie. Thank you then. Have a beautiful evening, and we talk. See you soon somewhere.
See you somewhere.